Welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you here for the first grandfather panel, what I'm calling the Grandfather Cracker Barrel, where we've got experts about being a grandfather. And that level of expertise is a moving scale, but we're in for a good time and a good discussion. And what I'd like to do is have everybody go around and we'll start introductions. And I'm just going based on my screen. So, Win, could you introduce yourself? Give us a couple of minutes of your background and what you do.
Well, first of all, I went out online to look at each of you with some, scrutiny. And I'm pretty tickled to be part of this panel.
It's a deep dive, huh?
I mean, we share, believe it or not, a lot in common. This notion of connections with grandkids and great-grandkids, the notion that the best thing that we can do or be is to be the best granddads or great-granddads that we can be. And it's great that there are this many men who are really committed to helping other grandfathers reach their potential, or at least go from good to great. I think somebody used that, did they not?
Yes.
Anyway, I've had the great blessing of marrying a really terrific woman. She passed away about 5 years ago. And she really inspired the very best that I was capable of in terms of being a grandparent. And we decided that at one point in time, we had a group of friends. It was an empty nesters group. And they said, hey, we want you to come to another group to talk about grandparenting. And when I got home that night, I said to my wife, hey, I think we have enough for a book. And so we put it together. And really, I wanted to honor Linda with a book because she was genius behind much of what we did. I have 22 grandchildren. I have 5 that are from Haiti.
Oh, wow.
The twins that came at 9 months, and then a complete family, a kindergarten boy, a 13-year-old girl, and a 15-year-old girl that are now young adults. The little boy who's a kindergartner is now a sophomore in high school. We have a lot of color in our family. And, the other thing I guess you need to know about me is that I've had the privilege over many years to teach kids from kindergarten through graduate school. I spent a lot of time at the University of Utah and also a lot of time at Brigham Young University. And my specialty during my college years teaching was behavior disorders in children and youth. So I've had a lot of fun with kids, and I love my own kids and their kids, and it's just great to be with all of you.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for that, Win. That was great. Frank, let's jump over to you and let you introduce yourself.
I got to follow that. 22 grandkids and stuff. He's the expert. I'm a rookie. I got 1 grandchild. Dang. Well, hats off to you, Win.
Thank you.
You did research, too. Frank, I already told you all I'm originally from Brooklyn, but I reside in Long Island, about 50 miles east of New York City. And my grandson came into my life now, almost 12 years ago. And I was a fairly young person at that time, relatively young, 48 years old. And I was like, wow, I don't know if I'm prepared for this, like this is kind of strange. And what am I going to call myself? And I had all different names and whatnot. And this kid came up. My identity now is Baba. The kid came out and he had his name. I thoroughly enjoyed it. He has elicited things out of me because I don't have any of my own biological children. I married a beautiful woman who happened to be a widow when I met her and had 3 adult kids. So I never had that opportunity to do the whole, baby and, fathering thing. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure, given my own upbringing, if I wanted to be a dad. I was afraid I might repeat some of the things that I had experienced. I didn't want to repeat that script. Not that my dad was a terrible person or anything, but there was just some things that I just wasn't sure. I had some anxiety about that. And this kid has elicited things from me that I didn't know were inside. I've written a number of children's books. He's my muse. I had never done much in the way of creative writing before, and I have now self-published about 10 children's books, all inspired by or even with him in them. He's also gave me a redo, I've thought, in recent years on my own childhood. If you're looking behind me, I started buying him Hot Wheels cars that I enjoyed as a kid. He didn't glom onto them the way I did, but well, I now have about a half a dozen display cases back there. So I don't know. I think is there a 12-step program for that?
No.
It's just worse things I could be into, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It has been a transformative experience. I was so flattered when Greg reached out to me because I was kind of a nerd and I was bullied and I wasn't exactly in the in circle as a young person in school. And when I heard that I was going to be on the cool grandpa, I said, my name and cool in the same sentence. That's a win for me, man. So here I am. I feel privileged to be in the company of you gentlemen who I really love that in our time, and I was talking with a young man that in the gym just before I got here, I went to the gym after work and I told him what I was doing. And I said, it's kind of neat how we're more involved. He's a young father, so we were talking about Father's Day. I said, isn't it great how we are more involved in our children's lives? And I said, I always hated that stereotype that men are not nurturers. And he resonated with that. He said, yeah. I said, everybody puts the baby in the girl's hands, but nobody gives the guy in general a chance, or at least when I was growing up. I'm going to be 60 this year. Proud of that too. It took me 60 years to get this good. I've been marinating. I'm making my buddy there, Papa James, laugh. I'm proud of that. I embrace it. I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm loving it. I don't think there's anything inherent in men that we cannot be nurturers. It's just that we haven't often been given the opportunity, and there's been societal stereotypes that women are the nurturers and men are we're the breadwinners. Well, I'm glad that we're breaking that stereotype. We're busting that apart and saying, hey, look, we too can step up and be nurturers to the young people in our lives. In fact, I ran 2 after-school programs. I work with people as a career counselor. It's my day job. And these are people who are not only unemployed, but they have fallen on such hard times on public assistance, and often there's children involved. And sometimes we get to talking about some of the things. I don't know half of what goes on with some people. Sometimes they do disclose to me. Lastly, I am a person with a mental illness, and so I do mental health advocacy on the side. And I was just looking on the news about the Surgeon General and what he had to say about social media and young people. And I said, I think he might be onto something. And with that, I don't want to hog the mic, so I'm going to turn that over. Right? Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
so quiet and shy. It's crazy.
What's that?
You say you're so quiet and shy. It's crazy.
I was one time.
Hey, Papa Jamie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and represent the West Coast?
Yeah, but then my family's so, like I said, they're from New York. They're from Brooklyn, so I'm bicoastal. I can't. I know. I can't. I am James Papa Jamie Lott Jr. I was Papa when Papa was not in yet for grandparents. I became a young grandparent in my 30s. So that's why I started my show. Really, I'm a grandparent. It's been out for 3 years. We've been voted best grandparent podcast and all kind of things. And I'm in a book coming up that Greg got me connected to. And I've been doing a lot of talk speaking about being a grandparent, a young grandparent. The face of the grandparent is changing. That's what I do. But I am a certified life coach, professional organizer. I have a doctorate in divinity. I'm also an owner of a media company, and I do books, music, TV shows, podcasts. I work with all the networks. I've been doing all this for about 20 years almost. I changed my life at 40, and after being a farm and ag specialist, imagine that, doing that for years. And years ago, I was a nurse. But my first job, I was a day camp counselor, and also I come from a family of 12. So kids were always in my life completely. Now, I'm not married. I don't have a lovely wife or nothing. I have baby mamas, and proudly. And I have 2 daughters. And I have 5 grandchildren. I have 1 granddaughter and 5 grandsons, which is 4 grandsons. It's because I didn't have sons. We'll talk about that later in the show. So I'd have that. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I live here by the airport and by the water. I love it. And I was close to my grandparents, and I was close to my grandfathers. I am multiracial. I come from Dutch, French, Creole, Puerto Rican, Caribbean, Black, Asian, all kind of heritages. My grandparents were all different races. I speak 3 languages, and so that's me. And my grandkids, it's so funny. One of my grandsons just graduated high school, and I just got sent pictures today. His name was Rylan. One of my grandsons. I just got them today. It's just kind of funny before we do the show. And that's me at 3 years old behind me, standing in front of a Grundig record player from Germany. And I actually have that record player still. That's my introduction. Well, I know we'll talk more as we get into it.
Wow. Wow. And Neil, representing the Coastal Carolina region.
Yes, I have the distinction. I think Wynn run the most grandkids, but I'm the oldest. I'm a great-great-grandpa. Way up behind me is a picture of me holding my all 5 generations in that picture, of which I am very proud.
Yes.
Sort of a neat little quick origin story. And my son and I went to a seminar back at Web 2.0. StomperNet was the organization at the time. And we learned about keywording. So we been going along. We did some pretty good in e-commerce. So he said, I called him up one day and I said, I want to go to lunch with you. I said, Chuck, I want to write a blog. And he at the time was in his 40s, and he reached across and put his hand on my hand and said, Dad, you know I love you, and you can write a blog, and 2 or 3 of the people in the family will listen to it or read it for a while.
Wow.
And it'll all go away, but go ahead if you do. And I said, well, I'm committed. I want to write a blog. He said, okay, if you're going to write a blog, pick something you think you're really good at. Pick a topic that has a pain point. Poke the pain point, and then offer a solution. I said, I'm the best grandpa I know. It's been 20 years ago. I wrote my blog, caringgrandparents.com, which is still alive. And that's the name of my 4th book I'm writing on grandparenting. I had 1,000 people a month coming to that site when in its height. So don't listen to your kids. No, just kidding. But that's how I got in because of grandparenting. And the other thing that I will say in form of introduction, I'm a connector. That's something I do every place. And when I moved down here 12 years ago, I live alone. I love being by myself. My daughter lives close and everything else. But I set out at the age of 67, I'm now 79, to connect with as many people as I possibly could. And I have developed a technique of connecting with people in 15 seconds or less. Little children, teenage girls, ladies who walk down the street with a very nice looking dress on or something. I just say, nice dress, and keep walking. So I am a connector. So I put all those things together, and connection, as Wynn said, is the thing with grandchildren. And of course, later on, I'll go into all those different things about it. But that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you guys for those introductions. This is going to help everybody just to understand each other's backgrounds a little bit more and where we're coming from when we address these different topics. So the first topic we'd love to jump in and talk about is, this one comes from Wynn. The topic is, what do grandchildren want and need? And Wynn, do you want to offer a little bit of color on that before we get kicking off on that topic?
I do. By the way, I normally don't wear a tie to an event like this, but this is my grandfather tie.
Good.
I like it.
I'm going to undo it because I wore it.
Oh my God, I love it.
Oh,
I
wow.
love it.
And each of the kids, what's so fun about this is they were each given a couple of diamond shapes. So I'm going to show you one in particular. That's it's this one right here. It's called the Anti-U. As you know, BYU and the University of Utah are in close proximity to each other. And at this point in time, my grandson could not stand the U. Yes, which university he chose to graduate from? Not
Oh,
you.
Of course.
This is one of it's probably my favorite tie, and I can't wait to wear it each year. And of course, you know, I have the fish hook. I mean, it's just fun. It's
love
just
it.
something that I treasure so much. The other thing I wanted to show you that talks about connections is this is one of our river running hats. And Wheelie is Win Egan, Linda Egan. That's the acronym for, you know, my name and Linda's name. And this was a river trip that we did on the Colorado. And of course, when they're all wearing these, I need to turn it this way. The Colorado River trip to 2018.
Okay.
We had this beetle that came during the night while we were eating, and it was just kind of fun. So each kid, you know, made their own hat. And my newest hat, I mean, they go like this. I mean, I put this on, okay, and I wore this to our last, you know, birthday dinner. And they go, "Grandpa, what's with a hat?" I said, "I just like it. I kind of feel happy, you know, when I." And one of the kids said, "Well, you look kind of Jewish in that hat." And I said, "Well, what is it about the hat that's Jewish, you know?" And then another one said, "No, it looks really German. You know, you're looking really serious now." Anyway, I have a lot of fun with kids. I think one of the first things, and I love the fact that Neil has set the stage with this connection idea, because I want to use kind of a silly metaphor. One point in time, and I was working with a lot of college students, and we would have a retreat at the very beginning of the year. And I spent an entire year with them. And usually I would take a ball of yarn and toss it. And I would say, you know, I'm Win Egan. This is something I love to do. I love to play the ukulele, love to sing, I like to play sports. And then I would toss the ball to someone else until we had this network where we were all connected. But what happened is, on one of these events, because I spent 3 or 4 years doing that, I forgot the yarn. And I thought, oh, I have the perfect thing. I'm going to get a roll of toilet paper. So I have this roll of toilet paper, and I introduce myself, and then I hand the roll to someone else. But you have to do it really carefully, because at the beginning of any relationship, it's easy to have the relationship sever. In other words, not make the connection. But once you lay down a lot of connective tissue with your grandkids, you're well on your way. So I don't want to take away from, you know, this notion of connection, because I believe that responding to the wants and needs of your kids is all about connecting. And there's so many things. Here's kind of, though, a provision I'd like to put in place. The needs of very young grandchildren are demonstrably different from kids who are college age or high school. So you have to make some adjustments in things that you do. But I can tell you this, that young grandchildren love to have your attention. They love to have you play with them. And one of the best things you can do for your grandkids is to engage in a thing that I call unhurried listening. In other words, they don't get the sense that you need to get on to something else. And you're not listening for an opening to say something. You're listening to really understand them, to know what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, what they want to do. The other thing I would say is, at first, when we did this book, we thought we'd call it intentional grandparenting, but we discovered that that title had already been used. But this notion of being really purposeful in what you're doing. So, for instance, these river trips that we go on, oh my goodness, it's just amazing. What can happen in a kayak? with someone who's a little bit afraid of the water. And that night when you're sitting around the fire, you help them kind of say, well, what was it that you learned about yourself today? What were you really proud of? How did you deal with maybe some anxiety that you had about doing something that was, brand new for you? Now, above and beyond that, there's some other ways to frame this notion of needs. One is every child that I know, every youth, any adults that I know, they want to feel significant. Another way of saying that is they want to feel loved. They want to feel appreciated. Another thing that's in that same venue is grandkids want to feel competent. They want to feel like they're growing, that, oh my goodness, they're changing, and the things that they're doing are something that you really value or like. I have one of these, Diane, who's listening in. This is a picture of a VW that I drove in Germany. And I love that picture. And I actually bought it at a fundraiser. And her name is Mary Jane Harmer, and she's now a freshman at the University of Utah. So one of the things you do, one of the needs that they have is this need for affirmation that I can be somebody. I can really grow. I can realize my dreams. Another idea is they want to feel powerful. Now that sounds kind of funny, but powerful is, you know what? I know that you know how to make good decisions. I mean, I'm willing to let you even make some mistakes, but I want you to feel powerful. I want you to feel like you're in control, that I'm not telling you what to do, but you have the good sense to behave well. Another thing that I think it goes without saying is they want to have fun. So when they are with you, they want to come away from the experience saying, "Oh my goodness, that was so much fun. The food was so good." Okay. And I love being with my grandfather. I love being with my grandmother, or whatever the event is. So I don't want to take this too far, but needs, okay, vary according to the age, okay, and the kind of experiences that they're having. And if you have the good fortune, as Diane has, by the way, Diane's listening in, she said, you don't have 22 grandchildren, you have 33. I've married this wonderful woman, and she has 11 grandchildren. So it's just been great.
Wow.
And her grandkids are just spectacular. So to be it twice over makes a big difference.
So, Wynn, if I can just jump in real quick, I'd love to get some of the other folks' ideas and stuff around what you were saying before we move on to the other
that would
topic.
be terrific. I would welcome that.
So what do you guys think about this, what grandchildren need? I mean, Wynn covered a lot of great stuff, but any other ideas, any other thoughts from the group?
I do have what I call a hook with my younger grandchildren. I am the king of the upside down hug at AARP. And the way that happens is you grab them by the arms, smiling at them, and you sort of draw them in, and you say, Rodney, do you know what Grandpa Neil loves about you? And they keep coming in and coming in. And when they get them in, he says, what? You turn them upside down and shake their lunch out of them. It is a connection. My 34-year-old grandson now, jokingly, he's 6'4" and he's 280. He says, Grandpa Neil, I want my upside down hug. I call that a hook. That's a connection with my young grandchildren. Anyway.
Oh man.
Greg, let me just piggyback on that idea. I haven't made this yet for my blog, but I have about 15 handshakes that kids really love. The one that they never understand very well is the garbage man handshake, but I won't demo that right now. It's really fun is I put my hands like this and, hold the hand and I say, what handshake do you think this is? And they say, well, I don't know. And then I grab their hands and it's a hug. I love you handshake. And I do the fisherman where I have them hold their hands. Okay, keep your hands steady. And then I swim like a fish and, and then they, oh my goodness, that was so much fun. Let's do that again. Anyway, connecting both physically emotionally. I mean, there's so many ways to connect. I love Neil's notion of connection.
Sure, sure. And I'd like to move on now to talk about Frank's topic that he had, and that was what have you learned from your grandchildren? I don't know, Frank, if you have any, before we get started all talking about it, do you have any background on that one that you want to share, or is it just what it is?
Yeah, matter of fact, I wrote a couple things down before we started. Boy, I didn't bring props or anything like that, though. I'm feeling really like, wow. Props to you guys for bringing the props. I have, right, thank you there, thank you. I appreciate you, I feel you. I have learned the value and the importance of play. And as somebody who has a master's in education but always hated school, because I differentiate between a love of learning and the process of how we do schooling in our culture. That's a whole other podcast, though. Is play and learning through play. And there's a superintendent that I follow on LinkedIn, this gentleman, and he fought for recess when there were budget cuts in his school district. And I was just like, yes, you are my freaking hero. Because I think kids need, like, what amazes me, I talked to my sister and try to get together with her, and there's all this structured stuff, and she might as well have taxi plastered against her forehead because she's shuttling from here to there to the side. And I'm like, I was a free range kid, man. And my parents threw us out the door in the morning and said, come back before dinner, you know, and you just did your thing with your pals, you know, and you tried to stay out of trouble. Try. I would have son try. My grandson is also, I had two sisters. I didn't have a brother, and I always wanted an older brother, and my parents had to explain to me at a certain point that wasn't going to happen and why, especially when I was getting bullied. This kid has actually, I have realized in respect, he has given me a do-over on my childhood. On the bed here, I don't know if you all can see it. There are remnants of the last time we were playing when he was over here 2 days ago, and I decided to just leave him there because I cleaned up after he was here the other day, and he's like, where'd all the toys go? We were right in the middle of a scenario, you know, because he's like Francis Ford Coppola, you know. I'll say, well, what's our scenario? And a lot of times I'm trying to steer him away from all the war stuff, you know. That tends to be the go-to thing, you know, is, okay, we're going to have a war. Yeah. So how about we go to Mars? The bedroom's going to be Mars, and let's get this spaceship here. And Elon Musk is sending us to go check out Mars and see if we can terraform it or something like that. He's into science, so I riff on that. And I love what you said about listening. You know, that is so important. That's something we can learn, too, is to be fully present. I mean, we can do that with adults around us, too. You know, too many times I used to work in New York City earlier in my career, and I would love accidental conversations. I'm kind of like you, Neil. I talk to strangers, you know. And my wife cringes, the introvert beside me. Oh, there he goes again. Last few times I've been in the theater, everybody's got their face in a screen or they've got ear pods in, and I felt deprived a little bit there of that possibility. So I got this do-over. There's this importance of play, and I'm actually seeing articles that are appearing in different places. LinkedIn's my kind of playground of choice because I like it. There's not a lot of the stuff that goes on in some of the other social media spaces. Not to hate on them or anything, but people tend to keep it professional. The other thing is integrity. And what I mean by that is, I had a talk with him one time. We play in the bathtub, and I call bathtub Shark Alley because we got all his sharks and sea creatures in there, and that's going to stop at some point in time. But we still play in there, and I actually have a story arc on a legal pad here. It's going to be called Tempest in the Tub, and it's going to be about his sea creatures and the air breathers. A lot of times, I just morals come out of my stories, and usually it's something about some lessons that we humans need to learn, and the animals are giving us a talking to. Anyway, he had done something, and his mother had chastised him, and I said to him, I said, look, the message I got growing up was almost like you got to be perfect. I says, please don't take that message on you. I said, I want you to be your best each day. If you messed up, tomorrow's a clean slate. And and you're going to try to do better. And he and I had an interaction one time, and he begged his mother to come over the next day. And my wife had me on the phone. She goes, "You will not believe what's going on now. This kid is begging his mother to have another sleepover because he said he has to make it right with Papa. Can't wait another day," because I had chastised him for how he spoke to me and said, "Hey, man, I'll take a bullet for you, but you cannot talk to me like crap in my house. That is not going to fly." And that was all I said. But then there was like a stony silence the rest of the evening, unfortunately. But he cogitated on that. Apparently, that was bounced around his head. And I cannot believe the integrity that this little boy had, which is, I've had adults that don't have that integrity to make amends. And I didn't make him feel less than, because when he apologized to me when he came home the next day, the very first thing I did was I knelt down there and said, "You know what? It takes two to have a conflict. So I'm sorry for my part in our differences," because that was something that no adult ever said to me, even when they had, done me wrong. And I'll leave it there.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I'm just going to jump in with on this one. So the thing, all my grandkids are 6 years and under. The thing that was interesting to me is how quick the grandkids can sometimes forgive their different their friends, their relationships. Those connections are very elastic. That seems to be a little bit of a thing. And here's the thing: he's up on top of a slide playing pirate with a little girl at his preschool or whatever. He probably did something to make her mad. Anyway, he was no longer on top of that slide. And the result was he had a 90-degree bend in his forearm, where he ended up breaking both bones in that forearm. The event and stuff wasn't great. Of course, I'm hearing from my son, I've got to hold him down while they're setting the bones. This isn't fun. It's like, yeah, I get that. Kids break bones. You broke bones. Had to do it. But the thing is that the kid came back and then wasn't angry, wasn't looking for revenge, wasn't doing it. Like, he's off running around with her again. Like, it was just one of those, okay, here's the incident. It's over. We can kind of mend this connection and we're going forward. And it's just one of those things where it reminded me oh, wow, hey, somebody steps on your toe. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to keep this grudge for years down the road. It's one of those, hey, here's the incident, experience it and move on. But I don't know if any of you other guys had got any comments about stuff that you've learned from your grandkids.
Who hasn't spoken yet? I know I haven't spoken. Did you speak yet, Neil? I don't either. We both haven't spoken yet. Neil, you can go first if you want to say something.
No, go.
Who, me? Okay.
Yeah.
Who, me? Okay. Now am I going to talk? Okay, let me see. What am I saying? No.
Anyway.
I have learned a lot of stuff from my grandchildren because I have two sets now. So I have an older set where the youngest is turning 18. And I have a newer set. The oldest is 3. So one's from one daughter and family, the other's from the other daughter and family. And one was, I was raising kids still while I had grandchildren. The other one during COVID and a lockdown. So I have two separate experiences going on right now that I have learned so much. I mean, I can even tie in the first two things we talked about, what grandchildren want to need and what have I learned from them. One, I'm not their parent. They don't want me to be their parent. It is not my job to be their parent. That's number one. Number two, it is my job to give them a different experience than their family life, their parents, and their grandmothers, and their aunties and uncles. I am their grandfather. I'm a male of the family. I'm a patriarch of the family. What I learned was that I have a family tree now. I was like, after me, there's just branches that go on. And that was such an interesting thing for me. I always wanted a family, but once I had grandchildren, which I did not plan on, obviously I was a little young when the first one came, because I said I was still raising her sister. I was like, this is a whole new world here because I'm out there, I'm still dating, I'm still working, I'm not, at home, knitting a scarf for kids or whatever. I mean, I'm out there living my life, Like it's golden. I'm still getting haircuts. I'm dancing at the club, and I got grandchildren. I was like, this is crazy. So I learned about time management and productivity actually with my grandchildren. And that's something that's also very, I want to make sure that. I also learned I have to make separate relationships with each of the grandkids as you get older. I mean, as you get older, as they get older. But I always tease them, when they get older, I age more. That's why I said that. But yes, but the thing is, you have, at some point, when each of their personalities start to emerge, I had to learn to go, okay, well, Rylan is not Scarlett, and Scarlett is not Zayden, and Zayden is not, I have to make sure I have these different, I have to tune in. So I had girls. I didn't have boys. So I was excited to have my first grandchild was a boy. So I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I get to have a boy. Like, and basically I was like, that's my child. I was like grabbing it all the time. I was so excited. We could play sports. I mean, either my girls were super athletic. My one daughter played water polo in high school, had better arms than me. It was a whole different thing. But I'm like, I got boys now, which is a whole different thing. And for me, I had a horrible father. I've talked about it in books and I've done talks around the country about it. My father was horrible, so I had a bad father. But I had 3 great grandfathers that were wonderful. So I was like, I want to be like them. I want to be where I'm still talking. They're all dead now. But I'm like, I'm going to be talking about them, 10, 20, 30 years later after they're gone. And that's something when you guys kind of mentioned a little bit, like a legacy thing. I knew I had to give them a legacy. So to tie into those first couple of things, I have learned so much about myself. And here's the funniest part of all of it. I'm also a long distance grandparent. And I also had long distance grandparents. So the cycle is the same. I don't live near my grandchildren. So I have to make the effort. We have to make the effort to see each other. But anyway, the last thing I want to say is that it's funny. I have 4 grandsons and a granddaughter. Who am I the closest to? Who's the most like Papa Jamie, James Law Jr.? My granddaughter, of course. Her mouth, her attitude, her smarts, her fearlessness. All that is like, I'm like, wait a minute. I wanted boys so bad. But one girl has me wrapped around her finger. And it's funny, and last note, I'm left-handed. I have a left-handed podcast also. And my grandson was on. I have one grandson who's left-handed. One child at all, he's left-handed. And so it's kind of funny, and we're close also. But again, it's the granddaughter. That's the one that just has me wrapped in there out of all of them. So I've learned a lot.
No, that's awesome. And Neil, I want to jump over to your topic, the creating a lasting and meaningful connection.
Yeah, I wrote this. The good to great grandparenting is what you're referring to. That entire book is set up on those 3 words. First of all, we have to last as grandparents. That's getting harder in today's world for sociological reasons. Aaron just put on a reconciliation summit and some of the explanations about how that's all come about. But lasting starts before your first grandchild's born. If you do not take good care of all the extended family relationships, you will not last. Because mama's the gatekeeper, and you can never lose sight of that. So, and I have an ex-daughter-in-law who I give her respect still, and I did during the time. I told my son, I said, son, I'm not taking sides. I love you, but my granddaughter's important enough for this to work, and granddaughter's 19. So the meaningful part of the lasting, meaningful connections, one of the things that we have to do as grandparents is up the quality of our questions. Socrates taught us that. It is a matter of making sure we're asking better questions. And I tell a story in the book, and I won't go into the whole story now, but I had asked 2 of my, one grandson was 14 at the time, and my other granddaughter was 16, his sister. And I asked him, what kind of things are you fearful about at school and in world in general? We got into such a deep conversation because she started. He wanted to then get in. Their mother walked by. She turned around, sat down at the table. This went in 25 minutes on one question. So if we up the quality of our questions, I ask questions to learn and I listen, as Wynn says, but you don't ask judgmental questions. You don't lead them. You just depend on their own intelligence. So that's the meaningful part of that. And the connection is an ongoing thing. You have to grow from 3-year-olds to my 34-year-old grandson, who I got a text from that would probably put tears in all of you men's eyes recently about what I meant to him. And you keep those connections alive, whatever it takes. I've been through, 50% of them are going to get divorced. You have to figure out how to work through that. But the connection with the grandchildren, so lasting, meaningful connections. And everything I do is in the best interest of my grandchildren. And that I can put up with a whole lot of extended family misbehavior and on behalf of my grandchildren. So that's kind of how I got to that. And I'm still the Caring Grandparents book, I'm going to add into that grandparents that are raising their grandchildren. I'm doing a part 1, part 2. That's another thing. But I'm not sure I want that kind of connection, to be honest with you. That's a very difficult thing. But no matter what it takes, you're connected to them. They trust you. You make them feel like they matter, to what Wynn was saying. And if you can help a child learn that they matter, especially to you, but to the world in general, you've added value in their life. So that's what I mean by a lasting, meaningful connection.
Oh, that's
Neil,
awesome.
I want to add. I can ask Neil something real quick.
Yeah. Sure.
So Neil, it's funny you say that because with one of my daughters in that family, I'm the only grandfather left. The other grandfathers have passed away. So it's a lot of women in that family. And they're all, I'll say it, they're like hens. They're all gathered together and all the family get-togethers, right? And Papa Jamie breezes into town. Oh, Mr. Hollywood coming into town with gifts and presents and everything. But you're right. It's like I have to almost fight them a little bit, but not fight them. But like let them know I'm not one of the hens. I am a rooster, and I'm here for my part as the male lead in this family. I'm not you guys. I'm not going to treat the grandkids the same. So the grandkids respond to me differently than they do to them, as they should. Right, Neil? As they should. I'm my own thing. Right?
It goes back to intentionality. I ask my grown children. I have one granddaughter who is gender neutral, whatever that means, non-binary, whatever that. I finally asked her, she's 15 years old at the time, and I said, would you do me a favor? I'm new at this. Help me with that. And now every time we're together, she'll explain what's going on in her life and everything else. But that I have to meet her where she is, not where I want her to be. That's a real important connection. So, yeah, it's an ongoing effort. Every one of them is different, and every one of them you have to treat differently at different ages.
I could jump in on that. Wow, a lot of wisdom bombs in there falling. The idea of, as the kids age and that they're different and tacking, even though I only have one, I haven't been a director of these after school programs. The idea of taking a kid seriously, listening to them. We underestimate kids and don't listen to them so often, or we listen, but we don't really authentically hear. You said something there too, James, that really spoke to, right? A lot of times us men, the women sometimes, whether they mean to or not, box us out and put us on the periphery. And that's great. You come with your energy, like, hey, I'm not one of you. One of the things I noticed in my after school programs in particular was the male hunger that existed not just among the boys, but among many of the girls who were being raised in single female head households, and therefore they didn't have that male energy. So I always was seeking out male tutors, and it was not always easy to find them, but when I could, and they just had a different energy that they brought to the table. I love, the questions. I have some deep conversations with my grandson. He gets all fired up about something, and and the idea too is making ourselves vulnerable too in those conversations. I never had an adult say, "I don't know," a parent or a teacher, and I think I would have benefited if they did instead of trying to BS me with something. So I will say to a child, whether it's my grandson or one of the kids in my program, they hit me with something, I don't know. But I quickly follow it up with, let's go find out, whether it's through the oracle of Google or mother means. Let's go learn together. I'm along for the ride. You got me curious about this too. He's talking about freaking Dyson spheres to me the other day, and now I'm a sci-fi fan, so I actually knew what the hell he was talking about. Well, I found he's always making me watch YouTube videos on this thing or that sign thing. I found something about Dyson spheres. I just stumbled on it on CNN this morning, and I emailed it to myself, and I said, show this to Lucian. And when he comes over for his sleepover on Friday, I got a video for you to watch. I've been doing my research.
So, Frank, what Frank was so funny is I always say when I have problems with my electronics, I give them to the grandkids. They Papa Jamie needs you to fix this for me. They're like, here you go. I'm like, thank you. I don't know anything.
Tech support.
Now, I would love to, I think, pivot over and Papa Jamie, I'd love for you to talk and introduce your topic, and that's watching your kids parent. How do you handle their style versus your style?
So Neil kind of talks about that a little bit. He kind of, it says on something in winter. Okay, so this is always my opening line to anybody who's becoming a grandparent for the first time. I always say, it's wonderful. You're going to love it. But also one of the hardest parts is watching your kids parent. So I say that, I walk away, when I go back to my life. And then at some point, almost every single person goes back and goes, you're right. It's kind of crazy. And I was like, I told you, I know what I'm talking about. My thing is, and that's why I said earlier, I make the distinction, I'm not the parent. I did my job. That's not my parenting. And what I had to learn is that there's a fine line. Obviously, there's some abuse or something happening. I don't want people at home to know that that's something totally different that you step in. But it's just regular. But what you'll find is parenting styles. Now, someone here said, I think it was Frank, I'm Gen X, so I was thrown outside and said play until the lights go down. Then you come back in the house. That's what we did. And they say, you smell like outside, whatever. That was what they did to us. And I was a latchkey kid, and I had to take care of younger siblings and all that stuff. Well, that world's gone now. That world's just you can't do it anymore. So I wish I had more adult supervision. I wish I had more adults around. I was craving for parents to be around. So they have their parents. And luckily for me, my sets of grandchildren have a father and a mother. So I don't need to step in. It's not my job. But there are times when I see them do something, I go, why are you doing it that way? You don't have to. So I may, but what I had to learn, and you guys all know this, you all know this, all the gentlemen here know this, you can't do it in front of the grandchildren. Right. You have to find that thing where you can talk to them separately, away from the guy, because you have to have a united front. Another thing I had to learn also, when it comes to certain things, you want to have a united front. If the kids see you fighting with their parents, it affects them in so many different ways. Where either they go back to, well, screw you, I got grandpa, he'll do that. I don't want that at all. I want them to come to me for other things as an extra resource, as an extra person to come talk to. But I don't want them to use me as a scapegoat. And that's what I had to learn. So I keep telling people, you can't tell your kids how to parent. You can question, like I said, question, ask, like, so you're choosing not to beat your children. Oh, okay, why? No, I'm just kidding. But like, you're choosing to let them run the streets till 10 o'clock at night. Why? What's going on? Like you're allowed to ask questions. We're all allowed to ask a question. And it also depends because I don't have sons. So I had to learn that relationship too. Going back to winning the connection. I had to make a connection with my son-in-laws. And fortunately, I get along with 2 of them. I get along with 2 of them. I do. I get along with all 3, but 2 of them I really get. I like one of them. We get along. Famously. We get along famously. So he always respected me because I showed him respect. I always empowered him to make whatever choices he had to make. I always empowered him in his parenting, and I think that's also our job too. But if you're a father with son, and that's older, I can't speak on that. I'm a father with daughters, and the one thing I learned, and I'll turn it over to everybody else. The one thing I learned, especially which has helped me with this, girls like to be just listened to. So I've learned that my grandsons are totally different than that. I mean, not saying they don't be listened to, but they're just different. You know, as we're raised, I always say that men are raised anorexic emotionally, where women and girls are raised anorexic physically. It's all about their looks. But for boys, you're like, man, you're a man up, you're a man of the house, walk it off, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I learned how to spread my emotions through my daughter, because as men, we're natural fixers. Here's a problem. I say, Neil, I'm the first person to be like, let me just fix it. I can fix it for you. I want to fix it. And they're like, no, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me. And my daughters taught me that, and my granddaughters the same way. They taught me that, where I had to listen. And so that has helped me in my grandparenting also, dealing with the mothers of my grandchildren, because they're both my daughters. Sometimes they come to me and they listen. They just want to listen. And somebody said it on here too. It's called active listening. I teach classes on it all the time. There's a difference between listening and active listening, where you're really having retention of what they're saying, comprehension of what they're saying, and you're not talking so much. You're just like listening. And occasionally they'll say, "What do you think?" Then you give your opinion. So that's one of the main things I've learned. It can be hard. I'm like, why are you spending all that money on this, or why are you trying to do that, or you know, there's times my kids do my grandkids a couple of times in certain sports events, and I'm like, it's gonna be okay. He's a good baseball player. You know, I know you were failed or whatever, but it's gonna be okay. And like it's always like that kind of stuff. But more about it was, I'm here as a support to encourage them to parent. I'm not there to parent.
Oh, that's all. You know, the thing that jumped to mind for me on that topic, the way you were talking, and this is where my head goes, and this is a Gen X thing probably too. I grew up with wrestling, right? I love professional wrestling.
Oh yeah.
So when you're talking about with your son-in-laws about supporting them and doing all that, in my mind, it just jumped in, and this is probably too many knocks on the head, but it's similar to like, you know, helping a young wrestler do what they call get over, right? So you have an up and coming wrestler that's there, that's got potential. The promoters, they want this guy to be a star. Well, that young man has to beat a star in order to then become the star. And I think a little bit where my head was going with that, Jamie, was, you know, helping our son-in-laws become that star. And that's by supporting them, you know, especially in front of the grandkids, in front of the wives, in front of the girlfriends, you know, whatever it is, but supporting them. So it's like, okay, you know, whoever Eddie's the star. He's the husband. He's the father. He's the guy. That's the right word. He's the guy. And so that was what was kind of jumping out on me when you were talking.
You know, Greg, what you have to do is you have to take your ego out of it.
Yep.
I got an ego, like everybody else. I got a male ego just like everybody else. I got to take it. You got to take it out to want to do that, right? To want to almost mentor, to almost want to support another male. Because first of all, I said having daughters, it was hard giving my daughters away. I mean, that was not fun at first, because it's like, it's my daughter. Like, nobody's good enough for my daughter. Of course not. My granddaughter's will be worse. I said, every man you get, who is he? What is he? What is he doing? That will never change. That part will never change. But you have to get the ego out the way to even want to be a supportive person to them, because sometimes we caught up on our own stuff, like, but I'm the grandfather and I know what's best, and that's it. It's like, no, you want to actually slyly kind of give them just tools, like Neil and Wynn and Frank have said, to help them be the best sets they can be.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Wynn, you have any thoughts on this?
Boy, I've had a flood of thoughts. James, one of the things I loved about what you said is actually being a good role model of what it means to be a grandfather, a father, a man is so powerful because kids are looking for it. I mean, they're looking for someone that can be the hero, or, man, I want to be like my grandpa, or I want to emulate some of the things that I see him doing.
Mm.
The other thing that's really important about what he said is sometimes your kids and their spouses, they need a brief respite. And you can be that respite for them. They can do something on their own, for a while, and they can trust you and go, hey, my child or my kids are going to have a great time with him. And it's going to be brief. It's going to be relationship centered. I am so happy I have a grandfather like that. One last comment. Kids, particularly teenagers on up, are great crap detectors. And what I mean by that is they know when you're faking it. Okay? They know when you're being authentic or when you're being real. And when they know that they can trust what you're saying and who you are, oh, that is a gigantic plus.
Mm.
That's so true.
Wow.
That's so true.
That was powerful. Thank you, Win.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we've been on here for a little bit. What I'd love to do is I'd love to keep going for another hour or two, but I think what I want to do
5-hour podcast,
right,
a 5-hour podcast.
Yeah, welcome to the welcome to the Greg Payne experience. Forget
Exactly.
Joe Rogan. We're no.
Exactly. It's going forever. It's going forever.
Is it going to be painful?
yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. You gift wrapped that.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one.
But I'd love for us just to take a moment, go around. Any final thoughts? Also, let people know where they can find you if they wanted to connect, learn more about you or your projects. And I will be sure to put into the show notes links to websites and books and all that kind of good stuff. So, Frank,
Greg, excuse me. Well, it's on my mind. Neil, I loved what he had to say about the notion of the parents are the gateway to your grandchildren. And it's amazing to me. I have some dear friends that I think are just top of the line. They seem to me to be healthy, mature, kind, sensitive, understanding. But they will say to me, Win, I have some sons-in-laws who can't stand me. Or I have two daughter-in-laws that they don't really even like us. And I think one of the things we have to do, and I think Neil talked about this in part, is you need to do everything you can to open the gateway. Diane, who's here in the room with me, has two dear friends, one in particular who for probably the space of 2 or 3 years just had this awful relationship with her daughter-in-law. She couldn't see the child. She posted things and found out they didn't want things talking about her. But over time, because she's really patient and really responsive to what she's experiencing, now has a really powerful relationship with this daughter-in-law. So I think sometimes what we want to do is we want to help people know that the door might be closed, but if you do certain things, the likelihood of its opening gets better.
Well said.
But again, it's that ego. I'm sorry. I think people don't realize that, sometimes you meet people, you're like oil and water. It just happens sometimes. And I do have a son-in-law, which is like, we get along, but there's there's stuff there. But I know for me, I always have to check myself that I'm not adding to it. Like, what am I doing? Like, when am I in a situation? The last little funny thing, I remember when they had their first kid, I show up to meet, probably to meet them, my little Trenton. I'm about to hold him, and he's trying to tell me how to hold the baby. And so instead of getting mad and going off, I said, I held your wife, and she's still here. And I made a joke. I dropped her twice, and she's still fine. She got a path. But see, I could have went a whole other direction, right? I could have been like, well, I know how to hold. I know how to hold. I mean, I got to be like, I didn't do all that. I said, James, it's a little annoying, but he's a first-time father himself. At least he's being very cautious. But then after it was fine. We laughed about it. And I had a baby in one arm and a drink in the other. I worked it out, so I was fine. But it's like, it's what we bring. It's also our energy. And I think you three great grand. Well, you two grand. I bet the three I just met. I can tell you guys are really good grandfathers and great grandfathers. So,
Greg, I'd like to add something that when I was a youth minister at my church, this is to Winds Point. For 3.5 years, I had a couple dozen wonderful young teenagers, and I encouraged all of them to have a significant adult other than parent. And I think as grandparents, if we approach this whole thing being that, it won't work with all your kids because some of them will, some of them won't. But if you position yourself as a trusted person in their life as a significant adult other than parent, then that's a good position to have. And I cherish it whenever it happens with my grandkids.
Same here.
Amen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said about respect, and ego. I think the two are intertwined, and I'm thinking about a cousin of mine who's very much at odds right now with his parents, and there's some distance there and the connection between the grandkids and whatnot, and it's painful, and he uses me as a sounding board, but, his folks are, unfortunately, particularly his father, are unable to check that ego at the door, and it's always their right, and I just have a warped sense of humor, and so a lot of times I'll take the stuff and exaggerate it for effect to help him to take some of the tension out, like he's telling me that his dad was telling him to wax the car and this and that, like, did you wax your car or something? I don't know. Like, I waited a couple of weeks and I kind of dropped it. Hey, by the way, have you waxed your car lately? And, with stuff like that, where it's like, yo, Dad, I'm almost a 50-year-old grown arse man, and I can do this. I can handle it. I have raised 2 young boys. One is nearly 18. The other one is, his kid's a little genius, and he's in his early teens. And that was one of the things I think that caused a lot of disharmony between my own father and I. Is that when I came home from college, my mother and I made a definite switch in our relationship, and she actually approached me and said, "I want to have a closer relationship with you, and how do I do that?" And she changed how she was communicating. It was peer to peer. Dad, unfortunately, was unable to make that transition, and so there was always this up-down dynamic going on. And I think we all kind of chafe at that sort of thing. We want to be respected. We want to have autonomy, and I think that was interwoven in some of the comments we made, like giving kids autonomy and allowing them to make mistakes too. Sometimes there's some harebrained stuff that's going on, but hell, this kid had me write a letter to a vice president at Boeing because he had me draw a plane that he designed, and I took mechanical drawing in school, and so we did this design, and then I looked up the guys, and this vice president of Boeing wrote back to him and said, "Hey, we are developing a plane like what you talked about with solar panels and this and that." And I love that this gentleman took the time, and I wrote him a thank you letter. I said, "Thank you for giving this kid encouragement." I said, "This thing may go nowhere else." I said, "But what you did was so powerful." I said, "You took him seriously and you validated him." And that is something I think we need to do with all kids, whether they're ours or mine. We got a courtyard here in my apartment complex, and one of my neighbors was joking with me because I was out there playing with kids one time, and I was right on the ground. We were digging in by the tree. I forget what the hell they thought they were going to find, but they were digging, and I was down there with them. And another time I got home and I didn't even get my suit off and stuff, and he said, "Hey, let me do these push-ups." And no, here, let me show you how to do it. So I'm in my full suit and tie doing push-ups, and the neighbor yells out, he goes, "Frank, you're the biggest kid in this courtyard." I say, "Yeah, you know what?" I says, "I've been called worse." But to show them that we can be vulnerable again, and to take their concerns seriously, they were, whatever it was they were doing, I was along for the ride, and and it's good. I mean, that doesn't mean it's all rainbows and unicorns and whatnot all the time. He's a tween now, so he's feeling his oats a little bit, and I'm having to tack my sails and try to navigate that a little bit. He's not that little kid that just sort of whatever I did, was great. So he's pushing back a little bit, but that's okay. That's growth. So I'm just trying.
What's so funny? Last month was my birthday, and my grandkids now they each can text me, which is very strange, but they can do that. Text. And my oldest one was like, "Happy birthday, James." I go, "Who's that?" He's like, "Who's James?" He goes, "Hey, it's your birthday." Where I go, "Yes, my birthday, but who am I?" I was like, I don't know where all of a sudden I became James. I wasn't Papa Jamie anymore. So it's kind of fun. I did that on purpose, and we laughed about it. It's like they try their stuff, so it's fun.
Yeah. I know. Dude was something I had to push back on.
I got that too.
I'm not your dude. I'm not your bro.
Thank you. I said the same thing. I'm not your dude. I'm like, you're duding me? Are you duding me?
You can say a lot of stuff to me, but I'm going to be addressed as Baba or Grandpa or whatnot. But, maybe some other stuff. But as long as it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's okay. My mom used to say to me, you can say anything you want as long as it doesn't come out of your mouth.
I'm on that. Call me anything. Don't call me late for dinner. I'm that kind of guy. Maybe you're late for dinner. But Greg, it's a show to end. We're all talking too much. It's a show to end.
No,
and he told us it was going on for 5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. He was kidding. I think he was kidding. I don't know. Come on, Greg. It's your show.
Yeah, no, I wanted to. This was great. All of a sudden, we're getting some great interaction and everything going on here at the end. But yeah, why don't we go around? Neil, why don't we start with you? Where can people find you and reach out to you if they want to?
The best place is caringgrandparents.com.
Okay.
That's the blog I started that my son said would never work. That was 15 years ago. And then I have 3 books under Neil Taft on Amazon. And I'm writing the 4th now. That'll be Caring Grandparents title. So that's the way you get a hold of me.
Awesome. And Papa Jamie, how about you?
This is the thing I give all the time at the end of my shows. So I'm gonna give you the full James Law Jr. You can follow me where all James Law Jr.'s are sold at James Law Jr. on all social media platforms. That's everything from LinkedIn to Spotify to Google to Apple, everything. I am James Law Jr. I am JLJ Media, and I'm also the super organizer. ALOTOFHelp.com, ALOTT of help.com. As you find everything. And for this podcast reason, I'm promoting I'm a Grandparent. Comes out every Saturday morning. I talk to people about all kinds of issues about being a younger grandparent. So we talk about dating, we talk about, like I said, raising kids, raising the grandkids when you're younger, and other topics when you became it. So if you want to be on the show, folks, if you became a grandparent in your 30s or 40s, contact me and you can be on the show. We talk about what that's like. And that's everywhere, all streaming platform services.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Is it too late for me to lie about my age, James?
You know what, Neil? All three of you guys can come on my show, period. You guys have open invitations to come on my show. No matter. You guys are good. We'll have a conversation, Neil. Come on.
Awesome. Hey, Frank, how about you? What's the best way for folks to reach out if they want?
Probably the best place. Thank you, Greg, by the way, for having me on. I feel honored to be in such good company with you, gentlemen. And the best place to find me, my playground, is LinkedIn.com, and you just put my name in there. And as far as I know, Pomata is not a very common surname. We come from a very small island off of Sardinia, and one of these days I'll get to visit it off of Italy there. But you can find me there, and love to connect with you, and you can see all my little things pearls of wisdom I try to drop, or sharing other people's pearls of wisdom. I do a lot of that too. Sure. So you gotta take it and spread the joy.
Oh, that's awesome. And when we'll wrap up with you? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, first I want to say this has really been stimulating and very helpful. I hope that the people who benefit from your recordings will enjoyed as much as I have. I think the ideas that were generated were spectacular. I mean, it's just been a great evening.
Yes.
You can reach me at grandparentingonpurpose.com. I have a blog there. And the book is Grandparenting on Purpose, and it's written by myself and Linda.
Now, I got to ask you, based on Neil's, feedback about when he started his blog, did your sons ever tell you that wasn't going to work out?
Well, what's interesting about it is a lot of what's on my blog is tied to my grandkids. And one of the things I love to do, which Greg knows about, is birthday letters. And one of the blog entries is titled Just What I Needed. And it's a picture of Elizabeth, who's now close to probably almost 30, getting this letter as a newly married, woman, saying, Grandpa, this is exactly what I needed. And so the blog is designed to really introduce you to things that, I hope will be helpful to men who really care about being grandfathers and grandmothers.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And guys, I really appreciated your time this evening and for being on here and sharing your wisdom with us. This has been an absolute blast, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great meeting you, gentlemen. Take care, guys.
I'm going to send you all a book.
Well, I'm going to follow all you guys.
Love it.
I'm going to follow.
Okay, great.
Next time you're in Brooklyn, where to look.
I know. We gotta go have some Junior's cheesecake.
Oh, you just said the magic words.
I know. We're gonna have Junior's cheesecake. That's what we gotta do. I'm gonna
Greg, thanks for gathering us together. It wasn't too painful.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep riffing on that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We'll
yes.
We'll talk.
Sending out love for you guys all.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you guys too. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah. A lot of wisdom here.
Yes.